Hello, I'm going to show you how to make amazing pickles every time. If you follow these instructions, you can make amazing sauerkraut in the comfort of your own home, which are just way better than anything you will get at the store. So what you're going to need to make these excellent pickles. You're going to need chopping board, knife, cabbage, or 2 or 3, bowl, scales, salt, and jars. Now, the jars can be reused from other pickles, just jam jars or whatever you've bought from the supermarket, as long as they're washed out and they're really clean inside. Don't necessarily need to sterilize them because the lacto-fermentation, which we're about to do, will actually do a lot of the sterilization. You can use whatever cabbage you have to hand, although some are better than others, like these ones that I have here. Could be a purple cabbage even. Okay, so I'm going to start off by chopping the cabbage, and I think I'm going to use this one here, closest to me. You want to peel off the outside leaves and put them aside because we'll need them later. Chop it into quarters, like so. And then with the heart of the cabbage, you're going to slice that out by having it sort of place it diagonally on the chopping board and then just slicing down, and then that can go into compost. To slice it, you can do it as small or large as you want the slices to be. The smaller the pieces, the quicker it will be to ferment, but at the end of the day it doesn't really matter, whatever is your preference. You can also use a food processor if you have one to hand. Also, don't worry about it being perfect. When I chop by hand, I mean, it's never really in uniform sizes. Cool. So now it's chopped, we need to weigh the cabbage so we know how much salt to put in. Grab your scales, grab the bowl, tear the scales, and then weigh out the cabbage. Just put it all in. Careful not to spill any, and we've got 573 grams of cabbage. The amount of salt to use per cabbage is anywhere from 2 to 3.5%. The higher the salinity, the longer it's going to take to ferment, but it will be tangier. What I would recommend doing is experiment around. Start off at 2%, see how that goes for you, and then with the next batch, try 2.5, and then 3, and then 3.5, and see which one you like best. However, if you can't be bothered to do that, then go for 2.5%. You know, I find with mine that sometimes, I'll have really, really good kraut with 3.5% brine, and then the next time I make it, it won't be so good. Maybe it's a different cabbage or a different kind of salt, or I don't know. So I do also like to experiment around. Today, I'm going to do 2.5%. So to work it out, you need to get your phone and the calculator on your phone. On your calculator, do the weight of the cabbage, which in my case is 573 grams, times 2.5%. Or if you don't have a percent button on your phone, it's times 0.025. So that's 573 times 0.025. And that's 14.325 grams, or I'll just round up to 15 grams of salt. So I'm going to take this off and do a pro move, which is to weigh the salt out into a different dish first. Like this thing, 15 grams. And then we're gonna massage the salt into the cabbage. So in it goes. Can turn the scales off now, and we're just gonna massage it, press the salt into the leaves. What we're doing is we are massaging the salt into the cabbage so that it starts to draw out the water. It will soften the cabbage, which will give it a better texture, and as it draws the water out, it will create an environment which is not so good for harmful bacteria and spoilage bacteria, and a good environment for lactobacillus, which is going to do the fermenting for us. So it takes around 5 minutes or so, and you'll notice the cabbage become a lot more wet as the water comes out. See how we're doing. Oh, getting there. And what you'll notice, if you pick some up, grab a handful and water starts to flow out, kind of like that, then you're done. And the cabbage is ready to go into the jar and ferment. Scrape off your hands. What is going to spoil your sauerkraut is air. For a successful ferment, you need to make sure that there is no air getting into the sauerkraut. And I'll show you how to do that. So grab your jar and start packing in the sauerkraut really, really tight. So shove some in and then gonna pack it down. Once it's packed into the jar, you can use something like a rolling pin to really push it down. And you wanna pack in as much as possible, get it as tight as possible in there to stop air and spoilage happening. Put a bit more in. In the jar, you don't want to leave too much air and you don't want to fill it too much because both of those are going to have problems. Too much air and it will go bad, and not enough headspace, then as it ferments, it's going to bubble up outside the jar and you're going to lose a lot of the liquid that you need to keep this from going bad, and it also just makes a mess. So you're going to want to fill it to, usually on the jar, to where about the where the kraut kind of gets just before the bottleneck of the jar, or the jar neck. Using the water to really fill the gaps, using the leftover water, we're going to pour that into the cabbage to fill it up. And using these, our friends from earlier, this is going to be a cap. It's going to hold down the cabbage below the water level. And now this might get a bit moldy, but it's there to protect the rest of the cabbage. And when it comes time to eat, as I'll show you in a bit, we'll take this off and we will eat what's underneath it. What happens now, put this in a cool, dark place to ferment. And in about 4 or 5 days, you're going to want to come along and burp it. Okay, it's been about 4 to 5 days, and so it's time to burp the kraut. Now the thing to do is to take it to the sink, because sometimes the pressure can build up and explode everywhere and make the kraut sort of spray out liquid everywhere. So we just want to avoid that by doing it in the sink, and just place it in the sink, undo the lid, and then wait a few seconds and then do it back up again. And that's just going to stop the buildup of carbon dioxide, and that'll do 2 things. It will stop the jar from exploding a lot of the times, and secondly, it will stop the kraut going fizzy, which is really horrible. It's also a good time to check to see whether there's enough liquid in there. As you can see with this one, there is still enough. You can actually take the lid off and have a look inside if you want, and just to make sure that the top leaf is still keeping everything below the liquid line. If the kraut has spilled over during the fermentation so far, you can top up with water. If it's just a small amount of water, you can just pour from the tap. If it's quite a significant amount of liquid which has been lost, then I'd actually recommend making up a 2% brine solution to put in there. And 2% brine is 2% the weight of salt to the weight of water. So if you had to put in, say, 100 ml of water, put in 2 grams of salt. Once it's done up, put it back into a cool, dark place where it should sit for at least 2 weeks for now. The longer you leave it, the nicer it will get. So this is why it's quite good to do 2 or 3 jars for every time you make it, so that you can crack one open in 2 weeks, so that the impatient side of you can dig into the sauerkraut right away, whilst you still have some sauerkraut which is aging for a bit longer. Anyway, I'll see you in about 2 weeks so we can see what this tastes like. Cool. It's been just over 2 weeks since I burped the jar, and let's have a look. Let's open it up and see how it looks and tastes. So I'll just get rid of the sacrificial leaf, and it's all looking okay, looking a bit dry on top, but I think it's all good. And so here's what it looks like. So, Oh. That's come out really well. It's really nice and sour, like quite tangy, and it was so easy to make. And it's just like 2 ingredients. I'm gonna have this on hot dogs, gonna have it in sandwiches, gonna have it as a side to stews and loads of other things. And if you're interested, I can make videos on recipes for what goes with this, because sometimes I get in the mood for sauerkraut, so I make a dish that will go well with the sauerkraut. I'm really interested to hear how yours came out, so do comment below and let me know how it turned out, and if you've got any questions. If you found this useful, do like and subscribe. I've got way more content on the way on how to make pickles and different other kinds of ferments, so do subscribe to keep updated. Thanks for watching.